Hey, so I kind of wanted to go over the process I went through to complete this project as far as actually doing the work. There were all kinds of things I was considering, having the canvas upright, taut, painted from a up and down sort of fashion. What I landed on was using this surface, this work table, as the point of contact for the work in the project. And the kind of canvas that I chose was a primed, spooled canvas, more bang for the buck, and you want to make sure that you do get it primed so that the medium that you're using, whether it be acrylic or oil-based, can take to the canvas. You can kind of see some cut off paint where I cut off the edges, but I don't know if you can tell, but this side is the primed side. Basically, they painted it already in the factory, but on the back side is the unprimed area where you have just raw canvas. And the thought behind that is just like painting a wall inside your house. You want to make sure that the surface that you're working with is going to be able to absorb the paint correctly and make it dry and cure with the best possible outcomes as far as colorant, penetrant, and all those differing factors. So that being said, once I selected the canvas, I went ahead and sprawled it out on this work table, which ended up working out really well. I had to clamp each corner to make sure whenever I was painting that it didn't shift around on me, but that worked out fine. The only issue was whenever I was ready to cut up and section off my canvas, some of them had imprints of where the clamps had clamped down and kind of stretched the material. But it was an easy fix, just had to stretch it a little bit. So let's hop right into it. I went ahead and used this GAC 100 on some of the project, and in different areas you can tell where I used the GAC. And the GAC is actually a basically an additive that you can use with acrylic paint. It helps it last, it helps it spread out, and it also keeps it from discoloring. There are certain areas and certain prints where you can see the blue, specifically in these blue squares, where it seems to pop out a little bit more. It seems to be a little bit more, what's the word? It has a sheen to it. And, there are some good things about that. It stands out, but also, as in standing out, it really reflects a lot of the light, so it has a definite sheen. Whenever you look at it, there's not a kind of matte, flat kind of look. It kind of pops out at you, and whenever light hits it correctly, it has a weird glare, and the glare stands out pretty well. So if you don't mind that and you want to make the colorant kind of pop, just be aware that the glare is gonna stand out as well too. So the colors that I ended up using were 4 different kinds. Of course, right here is like a black. You have your blue, kind of a deeper, kind of more indigo blue, and then a red. So I mixed and matched all those, and I did a kind of template, I guess, where you have the 4 different colors right here. And I kind of did a test swath of kind of the process, a mini process of what I was trying to do for a base coat. So the base was the blacker tones, and on top were the circles and the squares that I was working with. Those were the red and the blues. And in some of them I used just strictly the red and the blue. I didn't mix any of them. But with all of the squares and circles that I did some sort of kind of thinning. So I usually use water to thin out the acrylic paint to make it spread more, or I did use the GAC 100. So the GAC 100, like I said, I started to notice it had a sheen to it, as well as making it thin and spread. So I kind of played around with that in each piece, with each different section. And, you know, I would come back one day, I'm going to use GAC. Come back the next day, I think I'm going to use water, just depending on what I was not necessarily just feeling, but as far as the aesthetics go, whenever I started to notice the differentiating between how it popped and how they sat on top of each other, there was definitely some intention behind that. And I'm trying to find one where you can really see the different kind of play with the GAC and the water and the circles. This is one right here. I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of like a blend of not just the backdrop. You go from this kind of purpley base where all the other squares sat on top, but also the blue squares where I use the GAC. You can kind of tell. And this took days. You know, this was coming back, letting it dry, coming back, adding on each layer. And it was a lengthy process, even, you know, switching directions of where I did the squares, where I did the circles, took, you know, days, if not a whole week to kind of finalize. I was working from this side over here, which is going to be your left, and this is my right, to the opposite side, up and down, down and up. And at one point I even used a oops a huge level to kind of stretch across diagonally the painting, and did patterns across the whole canvas. So it was a mix and match. Basically, when I got down to it, what I was trying to do was have a meditative practice that was felt, and what I could easily not necessarily tune out, but really just focus on how I was moving, where I was moving, how I was standing, how I was breathing as I was working. So the point being, focusing on breath